Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I'll tell you what, you all know how excited I get for marketing-based guests, but this is the first guest in over 1,200 episodes that even before we hit record, she already gave me an incredible marketing idea for this show that I'm so excited about for next year. But I'm also excited because when it comes to this guest's business, I'm so in love with not only her messaging and what she does, but even her company name. You're going to see so much how her unique approach and her unique personality brings so much value to the businesses that she works with. And really, if you're interested in growth, then you are going to love her mindset. So let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Cody Gillund. Cody is the founder of Grounded Growth Studio, which is a marketing consultancy that helps tech founders and growth stage teams align strategy with execution, two important things, strategy and execution, to drive meaningful traction. With nearly 2 decades of experience leading marketing for high-growth startups and global brands, Cody specializes in turning complex go-to-market challenges into clear, actionable plans. She's passionate about bridging the gap between marketing and leadership and helping companies build smart, sustainable growth, which I know that we're all after, so I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Cody Gillund. All right, Cody, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Heck yes. Well, I'm excited to get your backstory because I feel like so much of you shines through in the work that you do. So take us beyond the bio. Who's Cody? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Thank you so much. Well, I started my career in advertising, which I think was a really fun career to be in the early 2000s, dating myself a little bit here, but it was the world of sort of pitches with, Mad Men style creative concepts and, a lot of really fun ideas going around in the world. And that career sort of took me into a place of a little bit less sexy, but growth marketing for tech companies, in the second decade. So I really started to lean into figuring out how to help companies grow with that sort of creative storytelling background in my back pocket, and learned so much from different companies at different stages of growth along the way. I just opened Grounded Growth Studio in 2024, and I'm super excited to be growing my own business and practicing what I preach and learning so much from the clients that I work with every day.
Yeah, I love that overview. Cody, I have a tendency to pick on words, and I'm going to call this out really quickly. You talked about growth marketing as a specific thing, a specific art and a specific science. Isn't all marketing growth marketing? What's the difference about growth marketing?
You know what? You're so right. And I am a victim of my own sort of work talk by saying growth marketing and using a phrase that's really common in the industry to talk about what I do. But typically growth marketing leans into sort of the demand generation side of marketing. So helping businesses generate demand for what they're doing with other businesses through sort of a playbook that involves both performance marketing, foundational elements of marketing like brand awareness, and thought leadership, content creation, those kinds of things. But you're right, all marketing is growth marketing, really. But there are sort of some different tenets of marketing in play right now in our world, and growth marketing is where I sit.
Yeah, I love that. I'm really grateful for you sharing that differentiation with us because, I see it, especially as someone who interviews entrepreneurs for a living, how many people just do marketing in the very basic components. We always talk about the 5 Ps of marketing. Like there's that very academic approach to marketing, but there's no mistake why some businesses seem to grow so much quicker. And it is that strong emphasis on these core tenets that you're introducing us to here today. What are some of those differences? Because you've seen so many different sides of the marketing world. What are some of those differences that yield that high-paced, fast-paced growth?
I love that you brought up the 4 Ps because honestly, I do think that some of those foundational elements have been lost in marketing in 2025. And, one thing I believe really strongly is that brand isn't optional. And a lot of, the coming up of performance marketing and some of the more scientific marketing skill sets have sometimes pushed brand marketing to the wayside a bit. And I do think some founders sometimes think, okay, well, I'll focus on brand later. But really what I think drives true growth is the right combination of those foundational elements that have always driven brand storytelling since sort of the marketing trade was born, and the new innovations that we can all use in really smart ways like AI and performance marketing and all these different great tools out there to help us really connect with our audience and reach them at the right time.
Yeah, Cody, that said, I'm going to call this out really quickly because I know how much it's going to factor into our conversation. There's a reason why I called out in your bio strategy and execution. And it's because if I rewind all the way to 2016 when I started this podcast, and we hear from listeners all the time, and I found out really quickly in 2016 that listeners, to them, the sexy stuff are the tactics. Everybody wants to talk about tactics. And I feel like strategy is kind of that missing piece and that lost art, and a bunch of tactics all just thrown at random, that doesn't make up a strategy. Why is that? It's clearly such a core pillar of the way that you founded your agency. What is it about strategy that people miss out on?
I think strategy, helps you sort of look ahead at what you want to achieve and sometimes answer those questions. I think even in your own life, when you kind of ask, hey, where do I want to be in 5 years? Sometimes it's really hard to answer, and let alone for your business. And so it forces you to really sit down and think about, how do I want to prioritize my time? There's only so many hours in the day. How do I want to really drive growth? And what am I really trying to achieve with this company or this product or whatever it may be? And once you kind of can answer those questions and you build a strategy to help you get there, the tactics fall into that umbrella. If you don't really think about that and you're just sort of, drawing a line in the sand or throwing a number out there or, falling victim to some growth obsessed kind of feedback that you might be getting from various voices in your life, I think you're going to have a lot of just sort of tactics with no direction. And in marketing, there's so many tactics that you could use. It's important to choose the right tactics that are actually going to contribute to growth, or else you're just kind of out there doing things and not really understanding what's working, what's not, and what's sort of that recipe for my growth throttle that I can really press the gas on when I'm ready.
Yeah, let's talk about that recipe then, because I'm such a big fan of the way that you've laid out Grounded Growth Studio, and obviously asking those big questions. I'm a big believer that you ask better questions, you get better answers. So walk us through your personal approach. How do you even begin to put that strategy together in a world where people just want to say, oh, we'll run some Facebook ads, we'll run some Google ads, we'll do content marketing? What's the proper way to put the strategy together from the high level?
I think before you even, begin, you really need to understand, who am I trying to reach and why should they buy my product? What is the value proposition that I'm really trying to communicate, and get that value proposition right so that your customer knows what you can give them, what you can offer them, and that messaging is there. So again, sort of going back to the olden days of marketing, the 4 Ps, the branding, that's critical in this stage to really understand, what's your messaging and how is it going to resonate with the right people. Then I think you'll be ready to push the gas. And from a strategy perspective, it's, what's the volume of leads you're trying to deliver potentially, and or what, revenue are you trying to collaborate with sales to drive? I want to be clear there, marketing helps to source revenue, but sales helps to close it. So it's truly a collaboration. It's not necessarily, how much revenue am I going to drive for the business? Because that's what sales does. How much am I going to influence is really the question there. And then from that, you can sort of put together, okay, here are the steps, here are the phases I need to go through to deliver on that promise. And here are the executions that I need to undertake to, actually make it happen.
Yeah, let's switch gears then and talk about the execution side of things, because that seems like it should be the easiest part of it. But just as someone who's been an entrepreneur for 18 years now, I realize how much of it is about consistency and persistence and patience. Oh, yeah. And there's so many key ingredients that go into a successful marketing recipe. Where do we go wrong in the world of execution? What is it that you focus on with your clients to help them through that?
I think there's a couple places. So one is sort of this idea that, say, the minute you turn on Meta advertising or Google ads or some kind of paid activity, you're going to get your leads in the door right away. So there's sort of this educational piece around, okay, I can turn these things on, but guess what? It takes time to warm my algorithm. I may have done all the messaging work I just recommended, but when I turn on these ads, I'm going to find, oh, this combination of messaging is really resonating more than this combination. So there's this whole sort of test and learn phase from a platform perspective and from just a learning perspective within your marketing team, within your company around what's going to work for you. So there's that piece, being patient, trusting the process, understanding that marketing isn't black and white, and there is some testing and learning to be had before you really start to benefit from execution. In addition to that, I would say choosing the right channels. Again, it's going back to knowing your customer. Where do they sit? Where do they play? They may not be searching for what you can offer on Google, but they may be, watching Instagram videos about how to keep their kids safe online, things like that. How do you sort of intersect their day and show them why the value proposition that you offer is so meaningful to them?
Yeah, when I hear marketers talk about that, let's pick on Instagram for a second. I know that as an end consumer, when I scroll through Instagram, typically, honestly, I'm just looking for soccer news and tennis news and seeing some highlights from different sports. There's different things, and it really takes a special sort of message that speaks directly to me and speaks to something that I'm currently feeling. That's why I've always loved that marketing phrase of the goal is to enter the conversation that's already in their minds. I love that concept. How, from a marketing perspective, do you get to that point? Because it is an interruption. So many of us get annoyed by the sponsored ads that we scroll past. But I mean, the goal of marketing is to not annoy us. The goal of marketing is to be totally relevant to what serves us. So, Cody, how do we begin to achieve that level of marketing?
I mean, I think it's really knowing your customer and knowing, creating content they're actually going to be interested in and find meaningful and fun and educational versus trying to sort of speak to them, or speak at them, right? It's giving them something they're going to seek out and find useful, whether it be from an education perspective or, an entertainment perspective or a brand perspective. There's so much emotional there are many emotions in play when it comes to marketing. And so how do you sort of really understand what makes them tick and what they're going to want to look at when they're also kind of looking at soccer videos and, relaxing with their doom scrolling every night.
Yeah, for sure. And you just introduced to us a few different ways that we can go about that. It can be educational. It can be entertaining. There's so many different ways to do it. You also talk about the importance of brand, and brand awareness is that we all love to hear from brands that we already love. I mean, for example, there's a shoe company that, Cody, I got their ads for years, and then finally I bought their pair of shoes. I love Allbirds now, and I feel like Allbirds was such a big advertiser across Meta's entire ecosystem, and now I like when I get their ads. I want to see the new colors. I want to see the new products that they're launching. What does that balance in that marketing mix look like? How much should we be entertaining versus educating versus brand awareness? Is there a magic mix of it? Do we throw it all at the wall? Walk us through that.
I love that example because, everyone kind of knows one of those things where you see, I think the latest numbers may be 11 touch points. I'm sure maybe one of the listeners can keep me honest here, but there's sort of always been this evolving number of how many times you need to see an ad to actually, okay, I'm going to convert, I'm going to buy it. And Allbirds is such a great example, and it happens to all of us. I think it's going to be different though for every product. B2B tech, which is where I sit most of the time, and or sort of mission-based, service-based clients are really going to want to educate. I love using thought leadership that only a company can provide to its listeners, say a survey or a study or something that they've done that creates information that's new and interesting and relevant, versus just sort of spouting stuff that their customer can already find elsewhere online and or by doing their own research. From a consumer perspective, I think that's where more like entertainment comes into play. I'm a mom, I have 4 kids, and I'm looking at, basically mom and parenting jokes a lot, just like at the same time you're looking at your soccer content. And that's where I might consider things again, like, tools to keep my kids safe and or other sort of products that I didn't even know I needed to be a good mom and or help sort of organize my household. So it just depends on, again, your customer and what makes them tick to create that right balance of entertainment versus education.
Yeah, let's go into the B2B space specifically, because obviously that's where so much of your expertise is. And we know about our audience that most of them are in the B2B space. Cody, within the B2B world, there are some loud voices. And anytime any of us log on to LinkedIn, we see all of our fellow founders who are just like, I made $3 million and here's the 30 things that I learned. And everybody feels like they should be or they have to be doing those types of things. You obviously put together totally bespoke marketing plans and strategies based on what you see about their market. And I'm very excited for you to give permission to our listeners that they don't have to do what everybody else is doing. That said, it is so visible and we have seen those examples so much. What do you make of that? Because obviously thought leadership is valuable and being seen on LinkedIn and elsewhere is important. Do we have to be doing that stuff? Do we have to be building up that personal brand as well simultaneously?
I think we do. I don't think we have to do it in the way everybody else does, but I think, it's important to think about your personal brand. It's important to build founder thought leadership as a part of a B2B strategy because it contributes to authenticity and credibility. And typically, those are really important things that you're trying to communicate when you're, sharing with the world this value proposition that you have that other businesses can take advantage of. Other businesses want to know that they can trust you and that there's a reason, you're credible enough to provide these services. And I think hearing from founders is a really good way to do that. But, in addition to that, there's sort of this like authenticity and trust building and, human storytelling element that I think is really important. There's also some really cool sort of innovations with AI and things that we can do to, talk to customers, again, when they're at different points in the life cycle, thinking about your product, make sure that, you're sharing a story that's really targeted and really resonates with them when they might be thinking about it. And I think those are some tools that go beyond LinkedIn to really, again, reinforce that authenticity and credibility in a new way.
Cody, you went there, so I'm going to follow. You brought up AI first, so let's talk about AI because it's definitely changing and reshaping the marketing world in so many ways. It's making more things easier to do more quickly, but at the same time, a lot of people are starting to sound the same with all of our long dashes that people are rolling out. So what's your take? Where are we with AI? How should we be viewing it? How can we turn it into an asset for us?
So, I really embrace AI. I think AI is something that can help you be more productive. It can help you be smarter. It can help you be more organized, all of those things. But I use the phrase help you a lot, right? It's not something to just set and forget. I think of AI and actually wrote an article about this for Forbes Communication Council as sort of my intern. So I've trained my own AI tools to work for me and help me in some of those areas that I mentioned. And, I recommend others kind of do the same in that, it always needs to be checked. I can't tell you how many times, it said something incorrect or it's given me a link that was a 404. It's not fail safe, but it can help in so many ways and it can help you be smarter. And I think as marketers, if we don't embrace AI, it's a mistake as we sort of navigate this new world where it's really in everything that we touch. I think it's an exciting opportunity and it's one that each part of the trade can use differently to, enhance their human skill set and experience.
Yeah, I want to go deeper there because we obviously see people that are just straight up copying and pasting AI content as blog post content, as social media content. Yes, I'm going to call all of you out that are doing that at this time, which it is to say that there are right ways to do it, of course, Cody. Are you using AI both on the strategy side as well as the tactical side to output content and to do the actual, I imagine like where my head goes talking to you today is split testing used to be so difficult. When I would put ad campaigns together, to think of 10 variations of a headline, I'm a human, I only have one brain, I'm going to think in the same train of thought. I'd have to like go for a walk and try to clear my mind and then think of something completely from scratch. Not so easy, but it is way easier with AI. So are there gaps on both the strategic and the tactical side that you're plugging with AI?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of the busy work pieces. Definitely using it in everything that I do, but I'm not saying, hey, write this strategy for me. I'm saying, here's my strategy. Can you, like, to your point, give me 10 variations of headlines, or, what are some tasks that need to be accomplished to move to this next stage of the strategy, things like that. It's more just sort of a friend that I'm brainstorming with, versus doing my job for me. And your output in AI is really only as good as the input. So, the experience I have, the ideas that I have are just sort of, unlocked further, especially as a one-woman agency, with the productivity that AI unlocks for me.
Yeah, for sure. That's the cool thing is nobody's alone in their entrepreneurial journeys now. It's so cool
Right.
to have a sounding board, an objective, somewhat mostly objective sounding board to bounce ideas off of. So I really appreciate those insights. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about metrics and analytics, because obviously in the high growth environments that you've operated within and that you navigate alongside your clients, what are the metrics that you're paying attention to with your marketer's hat on? And I'm just going to throw one final twist into that question. Do those change right out of the gates versus, once you've got traction inside of a campaign? Because I know how much patience goes into the initial strategy. So do those metrics that you pay attention to change over time?
Oh yeah, they definitely do. And I think, it's really important to understand sort of early signs of things that are working, versus, okay, I have a mature marketing program. How am I going to really optimize that program? Like, those metrics discussions are completely different. And so, I think with all of my clients, what I advise is, okay, here's a list of KPIs that you might look at when we just started our marketing, versus now we've started it. We know our message. We know what channels work for us. Okay, that's when you start to sort of dig into some of those individual metrics, like, CAC and how things are performing, and from a actual, marketing piece perspective, like click-through rate, things like that. The volume of qualified, maybe, sales leads that I'm putting into the funnel, the number of them that are actually closing and contributing revenue. Those are things I would look at a little bit later in your marketing journey. Whereas at first I would look at things like, the traffic you're driving, organic growth, link backs to your site, things like that, to really start to indicate, okay, my voice is being heard, things are resonating. Now from here, how do I sort of turn that into actual dollars and growth metrics that can be optimized and scaled?
Yeah, I love those insights. I so appreciate that, because it is that blend of patience, but also celebrating those early successes to know where to double down those efforts. So it's really cool hearing how that evolves over time with you and your clients. That said, I think it's so cool that you have started your own consultancy. You are in the game for yourself, not just as a subject matter expert, but as a fellow entrepreneur. And so with that in mind, what are some of those things that you picked up from your professional career that you said, I love these, I want to incorporate them into the way that I operate? And then Cody, I'm going to totally put you on the spot. What are some of those things that you said, I'm going to do a little bit differently under my own umbrella?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things, as a leader inside a company, I think there's a lot of sort of fear of making a mistake or being perfect all the time when it comes to marketing. And when I do my own marketing for Grounded Growth Studio, I'm not afraid to sort of try some things and see if they work. If they don't, move on. I'm evolving every day, and I'm testing and learning every day sort of what resonates with my own prospects. And, I'm not afraid to sort of test something new. And I really love that about owning my own business, just because I think sometimes, the fear of being perfect can keep you from doing anything at all. Right. And so that hinders growth in itself.
Yeah, for sure. Along those lines, a question I've been asking more and more as 2025 has been progressing is about your executive time. I think that that's such a powerful transition for every entrepreneur, especially when they step into not just being a mere entrepreneur, but also being the CEO of their business. I think that it's such a different way to think. It's a different way to see your own business. And Cody, you obviously bring leadership experience from your past life into your entrepreneurial life. What's that executive time look like? Is this something intentional that you're carving out? What sort of questions are you asking yourself, short and long term? I'd love some insights there.
It's funny. Here's where I really learn from my founders, because they are all sitting where I now sit with Grounded Growth Studio. Grounded Growth Studios is my baby, and it gives me insight a little bit more into, conversations I've had in the past and approaches that founders have chosen that when I was sitting in-house, maybe I didn't understand or I couldn't relate to as well. So I love that. It brings me sort of closer to my clients in that way. And then just from a CEO perspective, I really do think it helps me be a better marketer to also be a CEO and think about, where do I want to be with this company by the end of this year, by the end of next year, what's the end goal for this company, and sort of practicing what I preach, circling back to our strategy conversation at the beginning of the discussion. How am I going to get there? And what do I need to do from an execution perspective to get there?
Yeah. One last personal insight that I'd love to glean from you, because I know it'll be valuable for listeners, and that is the way that you structure your offers. It's something that I really appreciate about Grounded Growth Studio is that you do have fractional CMO services, so that's retainer based, but I really love the way that you've positioned your project-based packages as well, is that you have a package called the Funnel Fix, which if I have a funnel and it's not working up to snuff, or I want to optimize it further, I can get your set of eyes on that. The content system, if I don't have a successful content marketing strategy, that's something that you can help me bring to life. I think it's so cool how you've identified these gaps in businesses and you can plug them both big and small. Talk to us about the way that you've laid that out. I've teased just a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear it from your perspective.
Yeah, when I started this company and I started thinking about, well, what can I offer? Because like you said at the beginning, isn't all marketing growth marketing? There's so many things that I've done in my career and so many areas of marketing that I could lean into and help with. But I worked with a really great sort of brand consultant, and she kind of sparked some brainstorming for me around the specific areas that I can really help with and that I'm really good at. And that's sort of what generated those packages. And, I find that founders sort of on the precipice of exponential growth typically need one of the things that I've positioned as sort of a project-based package. So whether it be essentially a marketing plan to really set the foundation for your marketing program, or like you said, sort of some help on your CRM, your funnel, and your sales and marketing alignment or content, a lot of folks have the same needs. A lot of folks need to polish one of those areas before they really embark on a growth journey. And so I love sort of helping them identify that, and in that way also communicating the value that I can offer.
Yeah, very cool. I love that. And we're going to drop those links in just a minute. But before we get there, I always love asking a super broad question at the end of every episode. You can take it in any direction you want. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both wantrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you are one of us as a fellow entrepreneur yourself, what's that piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
I would love to just leave them with the advice of, go go for it. Don't be afraid to do something scary. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. Be brave and get out there and try new things. And, I think that's what helped me have the courage to take Grounded Growth Studio to another level and really practice what I preach when it comes to, the great marketing programs that are really going to drive exponential growth for a company.
Yeah, Cody, you talk about the fact that you practice what you preach. And as someone on the other side of this conversation, that's what I hear, because you talked about even in your own business that you love experimenting with things. And that's really what I hear in this advice that you're leaving for listeners is just try it. I mean, ultimately, and that's what I think is one of the cool and unique things about marketing is that nobody knows what's going to work entirely. You have to experiment. It forces you to experiment. So I've loved hearing all of these insights from you today, not only about your subject matter expertise, but you being the founder of your own business. So along those lines, for listeners who want to check out Grounded Growth Studio, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
www.groundedgrowthstudio.com. And then if you want to sort of check out some ideas around what I think about marketing, tips and tricks, /resources is a great place to start. I'm also on LinkedIn and Instagram.
I love that. Well, Cody, we're going to drop all those links down below in the show notes. So listeners, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode, you'll not only find a link to Cody's website, which is at groundedgrowthstudio.com. Super easy to remember. Such a great business name. You've heard her very grounded approach to marketing here today, but we're also linking to her personal LinkedIn. So if you want to reach out and continue the conversation, you see, I feel like we jumped from one topic to the next and Cody effortlessly met us there. So if you want to continue that conversation, check out the links in the show notes. Otherwise, Cody, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was such a fun conversation.